welcome again to the Executive Room podcast, where we delve deep into the minds of remarkable executives who have shaped the business world with their ideas and actions. I'm your host, Kimberly Afonso, CEO and founder of the KA Consulting Group, and today it's an honor to have David Blaha with us. David is the Chief Revenue Officer at Extend. He holds a BSBA in Marketing and Management from Appalachian State University and has over 30 years of experience driving revenue growth and transformational leadership. Previously, as vice president at American Express, he led executive level teams, earning a place in the American Express Hall of Fame. He has managed teams achieving over $20 billion in annual sales and secured deals exceeding $1 billion across Fortune 500 companies. So very exciting career trajectory, and let's get started. David, currently you are Chief Revenue Officer at Extend, and you have a super interesting career path. You spent more than 20 years at American Express, as we mentioned. Could you describe a bit your career journey and how you got into the Amex Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I love the Hall of Fame. Thank you for bringing that up. Usually, when you talk about Hall of Fame, you're talking about someone who's long since retired and achieved something. So I appreciate that. Actually, I was still at Amex at the time that it happened. No, I joined Amex a couple years out of school and really had an amazing journey at American Express. Had the opportunity for really only the first probably 6 months of my career at Amex as an individual contributor, and pretty quickly I was entrusted with a team, and for the next 20 plus years, had teams of people located all over, sometimes in the U.S., sometimes outside of the U.S., really across the consumer businesses and commercial business, in areas of sales and account management, but also operations areas and service and marketing and everything in between. So a lot of different disciplines, a lot of different experiences, and I think to have earned what was the Hall of Fame the year that I was awarded the Hall of Fame, and usually there were 2 or 3 people a year that were given this award, is a testament obviously to my teams, because as not being an individual contributor, I think I was fortunate to hire really good people and turn them loose to be their best. And the Hall of Fame award was basically prolonged performance and in the areas of business results, but also leadership and people leadership. And fortunately for me, I had great leaders, leading leaders, and the opportunity to run a fabulous organization. So yeah, it was a huge bit of satisfaction in the latter part of my career at Amex before I made the decision to move on and do something else. But a great company, and really formed, I think, a lot of who I am as a leader.
It's definitely a great organization. It's actually the second place I ever had an internship. So I actually interned at Amex in New York when I was still in college. So it was a really great experience, and it's really great to hear how you were able to make some of those really, really impressive achievements, because it is a very high performing organization and culture. So really nice to hear you share that. And
Thank you.
what motivated you to move on to other adventures?
It was 5 years ago, about 5 years ago when I left Amex, and I really was yearning for something a little different. I'd been part of such a large corporation for so long, and big teams and responsibilities, but I just felt this calling to work in the early stage startup type space. And so I made the decision to leave American Express, which was really a hard decision at the time. And I think a lot of people were surprised that I left when I left. But I knew I needed to do something different. You get to a point where I'd continued to learn and grow, and I just was ready for something and to test myself in a different way. So I left Amex, and shortly after, of course, COVID hit. And that was, a wonderful time to leave a great company in a great role. But I started working with some venture-funded companies, and really, with a few different incubators. One in Atlanta called ATDC, which does a lot of fintech, early stage companies. I think at any point in time, they might have 200 or 300 companies that are coming through the incubator. And so I started mentoring CEOs and founders through ATDC. So just giving it away, ways in which I could help these often younger companies and often younger leaders build out what their go-to-market cadence was going to be. Leverage some relationships, how I could add value, and those just sort of exploded into more opportunities, which got me into a couple advisory roles. And before I knew it, I was working fractionally and chief revenue officer types of roles for a few different organizations. And one of those was Extend. Actually, although Extend was out of New York, I knew the founders, at least a couple of them, from my time at Amex. And it wasn't long before I was working 4 or 5 hours a week, and then 10 hours a week, and 15 or 20. So I spent a lot of time there, a few other companies here in Atlanta, and then a fair amount of leadership work as well. So board type work or working on leadership development, which is, a big passion. I'm sure we'll talk about at some point in the call, but that's what led me away from Amex. But I'll tell you a little bit later. What's funny is now in this current role, I get to work with American Express, which is awesome, but in a different way. So that's what got me on a different path.
Really, really interesting. And yeah, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about that. Can you tell us a little bit more about Extend? What makes the company unique? What is the company's mission? And also, a little bit more about how you're working now, full circle, working again with American Express. It's really interesting.
Yeah. So what's and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for having the chance to talk about Extend a little bit. As a chief revenue officer, I'm often out there evangelizing Extend, who we are, what we're doing, and what does make us different. If you look at the world of fintech, there's quite a few organizations, venture-funded organizations, that are often sort of neobank supported, that are bringing great new capabilities to customers and attracting customers independently of the financial institutions. Effectively, they're competing against the largest brands of Visa, MasterCard, American Express, those larger issuers like Bank of America or JP Morgan Chase or Citi or American Express or whoever. Name the larger ones, or name the mid-sized banks as well. Our approach was very different. Our CEO Andrew Jameson and Guillaume Brevard and Danny Morrow, the three of them, with really different backgrounds, came together, and what they saw were opportunities to bring modern payment capabilities to businesses. But instead of having to leave your current issuer or bank to go get these capabilities, why not provide these to the banks or issuers that these customers are already with? The challenge these larger institutions often face is it's not a matter of resources. It's hard to deploy new technology and to be iterative. Where we literally release capabilities on a weekly, every other week basis. So for the issuers that we support, we're bringing those modern capabilities like virtual cards, really slick UIs, consumerized kinds of digital solutions, mobile wallets, expense management and card management kinds of capabilities. All these things that put consumerized apps that you could work from your phone, your desktop, whatever, but in a way that today you might not have access through your existing bank. So that's what we do. We bring those capabilities. We've connected to a number of different processors and networks and financial institutions. So once we've onboarded an issuer, literally their customers, once they're made aware of Extend, can take their piece of plastic from their existing card relationship, input it into our app, whether it's white labeled, co-branded, whatever that is, and then within minutes, create virtual cards, create budgets, create all kinds of capabilities that today they don't have access to. So that's what makes us unique. And to date, we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of end customers using the platform across billions and billions in charge volume, growing at a really significant rate. So it's a fun time to be a chief revenue officer at an organization like Extend. where growth is what it is. Every week is a record week, every month is a record month, and we just continue that trajectory. So yeah, that's what's going on over here. That's what makes us uniquely different.
Very exciting. And, it would be great to hear your opinion on the industry. How have you seen the fintech industry evolve over the past few years? And what excites you the most about the future?
Yeah, I think when I jumped into fintech about 5 years ago, the multiples of how companies were being evaluated was astronomical. The amount of money flowing in from private equity, from venture funds, was unbelievable. And often the models were great models, or maybe they were great solutions or products or capabilities. But if you sort of dug deeper, it's really hard to predict, okay, when is this thing ever going to be profitable? Or is this just something that a significant amount of money is spent on customer acquisition and a growth rate that, is way up and to the right. But again, what's the expense of acquiring this customer base? Fast forward to, a year and a half ago, a couple of years ago, an interest rate environment and everything started to change. And all of a sudden in the world of fintech, people started to care about, wait a second, is there really a path to profitability here? So, money got tight, and all of a sudden I think firms that had a clear trajectory, not only of growth, but a path to profitability, companies that were managing what they had been given really well and weren't extravagant in their expenses, but, were extravagant in their approach and to product and what they were doing. I think those companies started to really get valued. So, and I'm grateful that I've got three founders that have been real disciplined in how we spend our money and what we spend it on and where we invest, and a team that is committed to growth and to innovation. And so that puts us in a place where we have what I would say are really solid relationships with our investors, the investment community, and the brands that we're serving, because the capabilities are undeniable and the results are. So I think what the marketplace is demanding right now is, okay, it's a great idea, but can you execute? Can you actually deliver on the promise? And I think right now AI is probably in that same place. There's so many great AI solutions, and we use some of those solutions within our platform around receipt matching and some other things that are just critical to have. But same thing, I think a year from now you'll probably see, okay, wait a second, what are the AI bets that are really the right bets? Because there's no doubt about it, it's a technology that's amazing. But just like anything in fintech, it's got to be sustainable. It's got to work long term. It's got to be a real business that, independent of a buyout or an investment or whatever the future is for any fintech, is this an organization that can stand on its own? So yeah, I think that's the biggest difference. It's the frothy investment and valuations at 40 or 50 times revenue or whatever those numbers are or were, I think are scrutinized quite differently today.
Very well said. And I completely agree. I think we'll see in the next few years how certain things develop, and great to hear your take really at the forefront of the industry. So, one of the things why I wanted to invite you onto the podcast, David, is because of your decades of experience as a leader. Can you share some of the key leadership principles or values that have guided you through your journey?
Yeah, and I appreciate the comments again, Kimberly, at the beginning of the call, the kind things that you said. Yeah, when I hear the words decade, sometimes you just don't think that you've been doing something for a long period of time, and then you realize that you have. But no, I think there's so many great leadership principles that I could tap into or say. I think for me, maybe there's two or three that I'd lean into in this conversation. I think the first one is just transparency and candor. That just served me well, upwards, sideways, and to my team. I've always just valued very direct conversations. I've always wanted to know exactly where I stand, what I'm doing well, what I'm not doing well. I've always tried to do that with my peers, and particularly the folks that work for me. So, and I think people deserve that and really value that. There's there's too many leaders that I've encountered over my lifetime or people that I've encountered over my lifetime that, tell you that story of when they have their year-end performance appraisal and they're told for the first time they're doing something wrong, or there's a problem. And I think the problem in that case is obviously with the leader, not with the employee, because if you get feedback once a year that you're not doing something right, then that's not on you. That's on the person who you've decided to align yourself and work for. So transparency is really critical to me. I think, it has to be part of the human interaction. And I think people really value it. Now, I think you have to do it with care and love and kindness. And I say love because I truly do love the people I work with. I think of them as they're not just colleagues or people I care about on a personal level. I want them to be successful, not just at work, but at home and in their, personal, private, family lives, whatever those things are. And they need to feel that and see that. So, that care and compassion as a leader has to always be there. And when it's there and people know it's there, then I can give you feedback, Kimberly, and you don't feel attacked by it. You're like, wow, David, thank you. I really appreciate that. I didn't realize that was something that I was doing that way. I think another one for me is vulnerability as a leader. I think that it's just critical that we as leaders are okay saying, I don't understand. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm trying to track along with this, but maybe it's above my head. But when your team sees you act that way, then they act that way, as opposed to walking away from an assignment, like I got this, when sort of deep down they don't got this. That ability to be vulnerable yourself forces, or maybe not forces, but encourages the people on your team to be vulnerable too. So I've always tried to emulate that, and not be the smartest person in the room. Hire really smart people, and then let them manage their areas and have their wherever their expertise is strong, leverage that. So vulnerability, and then maybe the last one for me is just energy and drive. I think people rally around that. It's infectious. If you've got great energy towards something and you're excited about it, your team will probably be excited about it. If you're not excited about it, why should they be excited about it? So I don't know. Those are three that pop to me. Energy, drive, transparency, and just vulnerability. And there's so many more, but those three have served.
Those are really great ones, and they're really great because they really work in any industry. So there's something anyone can take from that in any industry. And talking about transparency a little bit more, this podcast, as you know, is all about vocal leadership. In your opinion, how has the role of executives' public voice evolved? And do you believe it's crucial for leaders and executives to be vocal and engaged around certain current events and societal issues? What would be your advice of where to draw the line, for example?
That's such a good question, and it's such a tricky question, and it can be fraught with danger. And for any senior leader, you probably at some point have attended, or maybe regularly attend, some type of media training and coaching, where you're often encouraged to answer questions in such a way that you don't become the news when you're talking about the news. And while at the same point you have these deep personal beliefs that things that you want to express. Here's what I'd say, Kimberly. For me, what I think has served me well up to this point is at any time there's something happening, and right now, oh my gosh, there's so much happening. Maybe there's always been so much happening, but right now it sure feels like there's more than ever. What I don't, the only perspective I have is my perspective. I grew up, David Blaha, in the house I grew up with the parents and family and the part of the country or world, and all those influenced my viewpoints and socioeconomic and everything else, right? What's interesting is anytime there's something that hits the news that is very controversial or there's very differing opinions on. When you talk to people that have a completely different background or viewpoint than yourself, it amazes me how much I learn through those kinds of interactions. Because my immediate reaction might be, this, but then I talk to 4 or 5 people that are on the completely opposite side of this conversation, and if I'm really open to learning, I hear some amazing things and my perspective changes. But you have to be open to a changing perspective. So I think for me, maybe I'll give one example. So during George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, there were a lot of voices, people that came out and said things. And I actually published an article during that period of time. But the article that I wrote, after I wrote it, and I reread it and I reread it and I reread it and I reread it probably, a good 10 or 15 times. And then I started sharing it to really close friends, colleagues, people that looked different than me, lived in different places, different life experiences, and just what do you think about this? And everyone that I shared it with had a different perspective, a different word, a different adjustment, a different something, and through that process, I just learned a tremendous amount about myself. And just how I positioned what I said, and how I believed what I believed, and what I thought was the right thing to do, and so I guess my learning in that experience, just like so many others, are pause, listen before you speak, question, and I just think the more you do that, the more you understand, the more informed your perspective is, and you're less likely to make an error in judgment or a mistake in what you say. But I think it's not really about that as much as it is we all want to be committed to our core values and beliefs and say the things that we believe to be true. But we also just have to respect and understand the difference of opinions and where people come from. And I think during that, when I first left Amex, I did a lot of work around leadership development, and some of it was specific to diversity, and some of it was specific to organizational design and inclusiveness, and again, things that I don't profess to have an expertise in, but things that the more conversations I have, the more I just learn about myself and other people and how much I don't really know. So I'm just less likely to fire off that message. This is wrong or this is right, and try to understand other perspectives. So I think that's it. It's such a personal question, but it's hard sometimes to not just stand up for something that you believe so strongly in. Maybe it's your faith base that drives you to that place, or something else, or family. But I don't know. It's a hard question, Kimberly. I don't know if I answered it well or not, but I answered it as transparent and honest as I could, and I think that's what I try to do whenever these situations arise.
Very well said. And I think it gives our listeners a lot to think about, because it is really so personal, and it depends on a case by case basis. Like you said, there are a lot of factors, a lot of things to keep in mind. So thank you for sharing that. And I was impressed by, how active you are online. You mentioned the article you wrote during the George Floyd period, but you share a lot of other things with your personal brand as well. Could you elaborate on what value you see in using LinkedIn and how leveraging it has benefited your career?
Yeah. Hey, one thing that I'd say that really ties to leveraging LinkedIn, even back to the previous point, the other tricky part about being a leader in an organization is when you speak. Sometimes you're speaking from a personal standpoint, but you also represent an organization, and that makes it even trickier. So I would encourage anyone. There's also a matter of talking to, and I've got some great media folks within and advertising marketing folks within our organization that I share things with all the time as well. I'm like, hey, this is something I want to put out there. What do you guys think about it? Because I want to make sure that as I represent Extend, I'm still a person, so I have personal opinions on things, but when I speak, I do represent the company too. So I want to make sure that there's good alignment in what I say. And if there's not, I need to be really clear that, hey, what I'm about to say has nothing to do with Extend. But even there, that's hard to do when you're an employee of of an organization. But to your question on LinkedIn, it's funny. I have a close friend with one of the networks that I saw recently, and his comment to me when he saw me was like, "Ooh, looky there! It's the chief encouragement officer of LinkedIn," and we giggled about it. But I appreciate the comment, and if that's what I'm sometimes known as or known for, there's probably worse things to be known for. But but yeah, I love when I'm seeing people, and I have a pretty big group of connections across this industry and some other industries too, but a pretty large group of connections. And when someone I know is promoted or a new certification or has done something amazing, or maybe it's a former leader or a peer colleague or someone I'm mentoring or used to work with me, heck yeah, I'm going to say something. If it pops in my feed and I know it happened, I am going to encourage all around it because I'm excited for them. I want to be someone that is excited for other people's accomplishments. And I think the comment you made earlier about decades of experience, with that I think comes some responsibility to people that maybe are younger in their career or in their role of leadership or whatever that thing is. And if there's some experience that I've gathered or garnered over the years through success or failure, I want to share that. And so I love to publish short articles or posts or things that I'm learning or seeing, or reshare out great information that I think could be beneficial to others. So there is a blend. I don't want to be so busy on LinkedIn that I become an annoyance that eventually you block me because oh my gosh, I got another wake up this morning post from David Blaha. So there is a fine line between wearing out your friends and colleagues, and hopefully distilling some information that could be helpful to others. But yeah, I try to find that right blend. And even with my company, because there's a lot of things that we're doing, and sometimes the marketing team will want to work with me on, hey David, would you post something about this new feature, this new release? And it's like, happy to do some of that, but I don't want to over communicate everything good that we're doing at Extend, because there's so much. I don't want to just be an infomercial for what we're up to. So there's some balance of things I'm super proud about that we're doing and the team's doing, and then some of the other things, I'll let us make announcements in other ways. But yeah, that's how I approach it, Kimberly. But it's again, I enjoy sharing things that could be helpful, and certainly encouraging people that are doing amazing things that I happen to have a connection.
Well, also the point you made is super relevant for the listeners, which is about that balance between your personal interest and things you want to comment on, and also the company, and not always just posting one side or the other. That's something really important. And that's actually something that not every leader intuitively knows how to balance. And your profile is a really great example of that. So I would encourage anyone listening to take a look at your LinkedIn afterwards, as you do a really good job balancing, where anyone visiting can get the entire view of, yes, you are in this leadership position at Extend, but also you have different interests as well. So you do a really good job of that.
Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate that. I really do appreciate the positive feedback, because often like everyone else, I do wonder, okay, is it too much, not enough?
No, it's very, very, very good balance. So I encourage everyone to look at that. And yeah, to wrap up, I would love to hear a little bit more about, you have a great commitment to training, coaching, development of people. You've highlighted as one of your passions. That's something we can really hear just through the conversation so far, how you've spoken a lot about how committed you are to training people. So could you elaborate a little bit more on what drives this and share your approach to fostering development with whoever you work with?
Yeah, happy to do that. I'm not sure when this podcast will air, but as of today, we are at the midpoint of the Summer Olympics in Paris. And if you're watching the Olympics, or if you watched the Olympics during the the summer, or any other sport for that matter, what you notice is often, after an athlete does something amazing, they run off the court, off the field, off the mat, off the, track, whatever it is, and immediately run, to the stands and hug their coach. They hug their families if they can get to them, but you always see them get to their coach. And watch some of the tennis tournaments now. You'll see, coming off of Wimbledon, running up into the crowd, Alcaraz running into the crowd and hugging his coaches and his family. And you just see the importance of that coach mentee relationship, and just how valuable that is in sport. You don't see it in music and theater and the arts the same way, but you know it's there. Intrinsically, you know there is a vocal coach. You know there is a choreographer. You know there's someone that has played a critical role to make that performance what it is. And I think business is absolutely no different. Whether it's the practicing and preparing for a best and final sales presentation, or the practicing or preparing for, creating a financial document or a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint or whatever that thing is that you're working on, or coding in our world, and how much development, takes place in coaching around how to ideate through a problem and getting to the other side. I've just been really, really blessed. I think there's a book in me, about all the different leaders I had over all my career, and the things and snippets I took away from each one of them that someday I hope to write. But all of those folks invested in me as a coach, and taught me something I didn't know, or instructed me in a way I didn't know. And so for me, having, grew up playing sports, and, and I coached my kids and other kids, and I've been very active as a mentor, and, been mentored by so many people. It comes natural to me. And the thing I talked about earlier with transparency, I love it. I love that feedback, and I love to give that feedback. If you have the opportunity to work on my team, it could be a good or a bad thing, because if you've never been coached, get ready, because I enjoy doing that. And for some folks, it takes a minute to get used to that. And it's, but what I know is the importance of it. And maybe just one story real quick. I can remember a few years ago watching Tiger Woods in the Masters preparing, and here's a guy at that point in time, he was number one in the world. He's on a practice green, and he's going for his 18th or 19th, whatever it is, tournament win, not Grand Slam, I'm sorry, major win. And he's got a putting coach right beside him, and they got tees lined up, and he's moving the blade back and forth between the tees that are real tight, and he's just keeping it in the groove. And every time he does it, you could see the coach just in his ear, just, saying something. I don't know if it was encouraging, if it was move faster, slower, left, right, you're turning I don't know but it was obvious that there was active coaching going on. And I'm thinking about this is, okay, he's won 18, 19 majors. He's up by however many strokes on the final day. This is a person that you could, arguably say needs no coaching. Obviously is doing it all right, on when he's playing golf, doing everything right, and still there's an active process of coaching going on. I think that's just so ingrained in me, and the importance of it, that when I had the opportunity at Amex to volunteer for anything that involved coaching, training, leading, I always did. My last couple years, I'd led some cohorts of about 300 or 400 people through this Harvard leadership thing that we were rolling out, partnered up with professors, delivering this content in large group settings. And it was probably the most fantastic thing I did, at Amex, just because I got to see, bring material to large groups of people and seeing how they reacted to it, and just the feeling of, hey, we were really improving our folks and giving them something to grow on. So when I left Amex, that was just going to be a key of what I did next. And I'm just committed to that. So, I've had it throughout my career. I've always been a leader, and had that, been fortunate and had that blessing to lead people. And I think it's then my responsibility to help them get better and achieve all their hopes and dreams. So, that's where the passion comes from.
And great story about Tiger Woods. Loved hearing that one. Even the best need coaching. It's a really good lesson across the business world too. Well, thank you so much, David, for joining us today. Thanks for sharing all of your leadership, executive, and industry insights. And until next time.
Thank you, Kimberly. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on your podcast. And I appreciate all the kind words and the accolades and the setup. It was wonderful. So really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope your audience enjoys the podcast.